Okay, here goes. Seeking meaning in myth and story. Um, I'm Dr. Paul Fortunato. We're going to talk about some aspects of this in literature and poetry and philosophy. Viktor Frankl is a person who I referred to a lot. Um, he was a psychiatrist who was Jewish, and because of that and the fact that he was living in Austria, he was put into prison. He could have left Austria, but he chose to stay in order to take care of his parents, and he was hoping that the Nazi oppression would not last. It didn't. It didn't work. He went to prison. His parents went to prison. His wife went to the concentration camps, various concentration camps. At one point, they were at Auschwitz, and there his parents died and his wife died. And he didn't even know about it. He did survive, and he wrote about it. And in a previous episode, we talked about the line from the Red Hot Chili Peppers that this life is more than just a read through. And when you think about Viktor Frankl's life and how life is precious and we've got to grab it with both hands. And we were talking also about Alistair McIntyre and the after virtue world, and how the ancients had wisdom traditions, practices, ecologies of practice, embodied practices, which we kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater. We thought, oh, we don't really need these things anymore. Taoism, Buddhism, Greek thought, Greek religion, Greek philosophy, Hebrew thought. The Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, a famous British Jewish rabbi, talked about some of the key concepts in the Western tradition, which he saw as coming from the Jewish tradition, from the Hebrew tradition. Conscience, responsibility, and obviously these are not just from the Jewish tradition, but had the Jewish tradition not been there, it would not have developed in the way how conscience is so central, and that we respect people's consciences. The holiness of human life as such, when in Genesis 9, Noah witnesses the death of so many people, and God says, you won't do this anymore. Or the culture of righteousness and guilt. And you can say, like, well, all this guilt tripping by the religious Jews and everything has ruined us. But if you don't have that, it's all about honor and like how others see us rather than what's like inside of me, what's really truly me and myself, and so forth. So there's various things. The significance of monogamous marriage, feminist in terms of women's rights, the balance between temporal and transcendental authority, that no worldly power has total authority. And so we're going to try and cast our memory back and remember those wisdom traditions, draw on them, get back that baby from the bathwater that got thrown out. And, Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And what are you living for? Why are you living? We have to ask ourselves. And getting back to Viktor Frankl, he was faced with that question very, very acutely. He was exposed to the most extreme tortures, really, in the history of humanity, where they were mistreated before they got to the camp. They were given tattoos of a number. They weren't even given a name anymore. They were. He goes to this bunk house where it was a shed built for 200 people, they crammed 1,500 people in there. And just think about like a crowded apartment, and then like living there all the time. And they would get one piece of bread for 4 days. And so, we won't go into the whole history of the Holocaust. 6 million Jews killed, many millions of others, non-Jewish people killed, a lot of them Polish, a lot of them Russian. And this was a meaning crisis for Viktor Frankl and for all those people. And in a certain sense, World War II finished for the West, and we kind of solved temporarily the meaning crisis, because we had the Cold War and we're fighting for freedom and we're fighting for, wealth, capitalist growth, and fruition, and these ideas seemed to be like a solid modernity that we could build on, kind of like the previous solid modernity from like 1776 and 1789, the American Revolution, the French Revolution. But it's come back. The meaning crisis, the liquid modernity, with a vengeance. And so now, opioid epidemic, suicide epidemic, mental health epidemic, polarization, seeking identity in politics more and more, because people don't know who they are. They don't have an identity. And so, as we are liquid modern scholars, we're in this liquid modernity, and it is what it is. We embrace where we are. That's the only thing we can do. But how do we survive here? We could say, okay, liberty, equality, fraternity, those old values, and they're still values. They're still valuable values. But it's not so clear that they're giving us a stable life, a stable ground. The more progress in technology we have in the past, the more technological progress we had, we were like more confident. We're fixing things. We're fixing medicine. We're fixing cars. We're fixing housing and heating, or air conditioning. But now it seems like the more technology accelerates, and it's accelerating really fast and at an accelerating pace, we're less sure of how things are going. We are less certain. We're in fact in a state of permanent uncertainty. That's what liquid modernity is, and we've got to face up to this. And so, getting back to Viktor Frankl, so he, who was in his most extreme version of the meaning crisis, shorn down to his barest, most basic self, he was literally stripped. So they come in and they have the finger game, and the SS Nazi soldier would look at you and say, okay, is this person strong enough to work, or are they just ready to die? And like the finger would go to the left or to the right, and you didn't know what that meant, and you'd go to that area, and generally would be the older or disabled people who would go, and they would basically get ready to go get killed right away in the gas chamber, and the others would go to the bunkers and stay there, because they would work them and basically work them to death, and almost all of them. And so he goes to his housing building, and he's still wrestling with, okay, what does this mean? And he's talking to the person next to him, and he's a scientist, and he's thinking, I've got this manuscript that I've been working on for years, my psychological work, and I've got to like preserve this, this is valuable. And he tells the person next to him, like, how can I preserve my manuscript? And the guy kind of like is kind of surprised, and he kind of thinks for a second, and he looks at him, and he says, shit. And just that word in German at the time, Scheiße, made him realize, like, oh my gosh, like that's completely unvaluable right now. Like, we're getting everything torn away. So, and now they come into this room and they're said, in the next 2 minutes, take off all of your clothes. And so they're like tearing off all their clothes as quick as they can. And if they don't tear them off quick enough, you can hear the lash of the whip on bare flesh because some people are too slow. And so they're like just tearing off the clothes. Then they're taken in and they're shaving everything, and like totally shaved down to the bare flesh. And he writes, while we were waiting for the shower, our nakedness was brought home to us. We really had nothing now except our bare bodies, even minus hair. All we possessed, literally, was our naked existence. The mere human being, Shakespeare's Lear, when he sees unaccommodated man, when he sees Edgar, like this almost naked guy, and like, yes, like what is it to be like just the bare human being, like stripped down to like just the bare? That's reality, and we need to face that reality. And sometimes it's literature that's going to help us. It's literature and philosophy and art. And so here's Viktor Frankl, stripped to that situation, trying to stay alive, managing to stay alive. How did he stay alive? Because he says, the best among us did not survive because they stayed true to their principles. They would not compromise. And Viktor Frankl kind of realized, like, he kind of compromised. He helped out one of his own torturers, the kapos, who were these Jewish figures who were basically traitors to their own people, and helping out the Nazis. And he would help out this capo by basically listening to his marital problems and giving him advice, and he would get better treatment and get moved up into the marching line where it was safer because people at the back would tend to fall and then they'd kind of crash into each other and get tortured, or he would protect him from other particularly mean foremen, and he goes on and he found his meaning, and we'll talk about that at a future episode. But let's continue thinking about the meaning crisis, the liquid modernity, and how here in the 21st century, in a much different way, we're not getting tortured. We have almost imbecile affluence, like constantly feeding us screens and music and sounds and a thing in my ear, like just so comfortable. And obviously there are some poor people, but it's different than obviously Viktor Frankl in his situation of the Holocaust or previous meaning crises. And so I was going to do a song here to relate to this. And let's see if I can pull this off. And okay, so I got the song here. Let me just position this a little differently. Pull this closer over here. And this is from Pink Floyd, and it's from a song called Wish You Were Here. I'm not going to do the whole song, but just get a little flavor of it here. And so Pink Floyd's great group. Really good at the meaning crisis. Sorry. So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail, smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell? Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze? good for change? Did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage? How I wish you were here. We're just two lost souls finished in a fishbowl, year after year, running over the same old ground. What have we found? The same old fears. Wish you were here. So, good old Pink Floyd hitting us with some lines here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl. So, meeting Christ, this running over the same old ground. What have we found? The same old fears. And so, this is a great image that can help us think about this. Some of these lines, the two lost souls swimming in the fishbowl, and you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain. And I think I can. But let's think about this for a second. Sometimes I'm in pain, sometimes there's blue skies, but sometimes we're in a meaning crisis, and can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail? But the thing is, we get sold the cold steel rail, and we embrace that when we embrace liquid modernity improperly, and we just lose meaning, and we're just entertaining ourselves to death. Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts? Okay, who's our hero? Who's my vision of the ideal? And maybe I don't have one. Maybe I've lost that. I've just got ghosts. Hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze. Did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage? So maybe you've got the lead role, but you're in a cage. You think, oh, I'm great. I've got my Netflix, and I've got my wealth and power and good clothing, but you're caged. You're a slave because you've lost your freedom. You've lost your capacity to think, to contemplate, to think deeply, because we're just constantly bombarded with this liquid modern bombardment. And so Pink Floyd and the singer, I forget his name, is telling us he wishes you were here, you and I, and we need to find that friendship, that fellowship, the fellowship of the ring, Lord of the Rings. It's a great image of finding that mission, that quest. And J.R.R. Tolkien, anyway, I'll refer to him as we go. So we've been lulled into this affluence, and we're searching for meaning. And so I'm going to go back to my share screen here for a second, because I created some PowerPoints, so I just wanted to show this painting of the Thesmophoria Festival, and just thinking about the ancient wisdom and what I'm calling ecologies of practice, getting that from John Vervaeke, the psychologist, and these rich embodied group practices, and as moderns we're who wants to go with that herd mentality where you're moving with other people? No, well, obviously herd mentality can be negative, but it can be so life-giving. And thinking about these ancient Greeks and these fertility festivals, where they were driven by desire, both desire to eat, so they need to grow the fertility of their plants, and the desire to have progeny, so they have these elaborate rituals and chanting and music that allows them to do that. Here's a picture of Auschwitz, and we talked about Viktor Frankl, but let's talk about this painting for a second from John William Waterhouse, St Eulalia. And who was St Eulalia? She was a woman, a Christian in ancient Rome, and in this painting, that's her death, and so she was martyred for her faith, and whether or not you believe in God or anything, just thinking about that ancient tradition that she was part of, that wisdom tradition, which was Judaism, Christianity, and in the original story, she refused to marry, and she was committed to being a virgin, and that was her way of honoring God and her God and her wisdom tradition, and to focus on prayer and contemplation. And the Romans did not allow her to do that, and so they tortured her and killed her. And there she is in front of a cross, the symbol of her, Jesus Christ. And what happens is they stripped her, but in the miraculous accounting among the ancient Christians, because she was chaste and she wanted to keep her chastity and live modestly, it snowed. And the snow covered her body, covered her nakedness, so that she could retain her chastity and her modesty. But look at this painting, and you can see that John William Waterhouse has changed the story. So you sort of have the miracle there. You sort of have, well, she's dead, and you have the snow, but the snow is not covering her body. It's not enough, and in fact, it's failing miserably, and we have a very, very sexualized image of death here. This was something that Waterhouse and other 19th century British painters tended to do. I mean, he did paintings of Ophelia and Lady of Shalott, like dead, beautiful women. It's kind of bizarre, and it's maybe even a kind of part of liquid modernity, like taking sexuality, completely taking it away from life. Like pornography is kind of like this extreme version of it, where like there's nobody there. It's just sexuality with like nobody, and here we have the sexuality with a dead person, and she's sexualized, and like her hair is kind of like sexy, and her bare breast, and the snow is failing to cover her. So it's this totally debunked and demystified vision of that ancient wisdom tradition, commodified even. Now you can like purchase like sexualized images of dead people, and it's got that frisson. But we could just have pictures of naked women, but we like having these pictures and images that borrow from that wisdom tradition and kind of debunk it and makes it more kind of sexy and gives us that frisson of depth. And so whether this is the Jewish or the Christian or the Buddhist or the Greek traditions, we've debunked them, we've dumbed them down, and notice there are doves there that are descending upon her, and is that the Holy Spirit? Or is it just a dove? And that's this debunking move by Waterhouse, where it's not the Holy Spirit, it's just a bunch of birds. There's nothing mystical going on here. There's nothing beyond the material going on here. There's nothing transcendent. And so this is that debunking move. And that, just that's part of what's going on in liquid modernity, in the Black Mirror world, in the meaning crisis, that we've leaned on these past traditions, wisdom traditions, ecologies of practice, and we still have some of them. We still have Christmas, and we still have Thanksgiving, like these kind of festivals, and in a certain sense, like even football games or like the World Cup, like these are kind of embodied, unifying practices, which are great, and actually we need them. But they're not that substantial. They're not going as deep as we need to go. And so let's think about this in terms of a poem. And this is a poem from T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. And World War I has just finished. Eliot has had a nervous breakdown. The war has destroyed the lives of so many, especially men, but also women in England and all over Europe and actually North America as well. And so let's just read this, and let me just make a couple of points about his take on the meaning crisis in his context. So this is before World War I. It's between World War I and World War II. And this is the end of the poem. And it's in various languages. So let me just kind of walk through this. What the heck is going on here? And it's in various tones, and I'll just read it first. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Poi scasosse nel fuoco che gli affina quando fiam uti gelidon. Oh, swallow, swallow, le prince d'Aquitaine à la tour abolie. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why then I'll fit you, Hieronymo's mad again. Data, Dayadvam, Damyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, what the heck was that all about? And so let me see, how am I going to do this? Let me go to my drawing board. And let me keep the poem for my own vision here. And so what is Eliot talking about here? So the first line has to do with, it's obviously like a fairy tale type song, and notice what it's about. It's about London Bridge falling down. So this is about a crisis. This is about ruins. Things are getting ruined, and so the culture is being ruined. Sorry. Let's get back here. Okay. And you have London Bridge is falling down. And so then you have a line from Dante's Divine Comedy. So first you have London, then you have Dante in this Italian line where it's a guy going into the fire that's going to refine him, and the fire, the flame, fiam, quando fiam uti celidon. And so I'm not sure what celidon is, but this is the refining fire, and this is where some of the souls in purgatory on their way to heaven are getting refined. They've been sinners in their life. Now they're up there getting ready to go to heaven, but they need to be refined first, and it's this burning, purging fire that's going to get them ready. Okay, so there's a little bit of kind of hope there. Then you've got the Prince of Aquitaine and the ruined tower. So we got another ruin, a ruined tower. And there are sexual images here when you have towers, and there's the whole phallic symbol. And so you can think about what that means with the ruined tower. Like, this is a person unable to reproduce anymore. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. And so that's the key line. So let me get back to that. But then I'll fit you. Then we have a line from a British play from around Shakespeare's time, and there's like this Hieronymo, this mad guy. So you have the crazy man from Shakespeare's time, and then we have lines from Hindu prayer. Datta, Dayadvam, Damyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And I'm not an expert on this stuff, but Shanti, Shanti, Shanti is this um, practice of prayer, which is a kind of mantra. And mantras are these things, they're embodied prayers. And you repeat them over and over and over again, and they get you into a kind of state of consciousness that breaks you from the rush of the now and breaks you through to something transcendent. And it gives you a peace. It gives you a peace that surpasseth understanding, this deep inner peace. And so that's what he's shooting for. And like in the meaning crisis, that's what we're shooting for. And what is Eliot doing here? He's going to these ancient traditions. Well, he's seeing, like, we're in ruins now, London and Paris and these ruined towers. But let me go back to the medieval Italians and even like the plays of the 1500s, and let's go to Hindu religion, and let's draw some wisdom from there. And so, and this is that line, these fragments I have shored against my ruins. So again, there's that ruin. I'm a ruin. So like, here's me, and how do I draw this? So here's like a guy, and like, but he's like wounded and he's kind of broken, and so he's got these kind of wounds and bruises and sores, and so here he is, and he's got to shore up. So I'll put a little bit of Italian stuff here as a kind of band-aid, and I'll put some Hindu stuff over here. So here's a Hindu, here's Italian, here's some like Shakespearean drama here, and here's a band-aid for my knee that's got something from the Greeks, and so that's how our friend Eliot is going to find a way to build culture that can bring me forward, and so because that's our task, you know, we're in the meaning crisis, we're in liquid modernity. There's no going back, and we wouldn't want to go back. But the question is, what do we do now? We're in this multicultural situation. We have these fragments of culture that are still good and kind of usable. Eliot gives us one solution, which is like paste them together, paste those fragments together, and then we can build culture from there. I think that's what we're doing many of the times. Like even like modern architecture many times draws from the ancient Greeks, and you know, various forms, and like totally new outlandish forms, like totally creative, like Frank Gehry, and mixing them all together, and that can create culture, that creates beauty. Stories, films, The Lord of the Rings, I think, is a great example. Even Harry Potter, and you know, right now we're in the middle of this kind of tech war for the great myth of our age. Is it going to be the Rings of Power and Amazon? Is it going to be HBO and their dragon thing? And is it going to be Apple and the Foundation? Is it going to be Disney and the Marvel Universe? Or they're also doing the Star Wars thing? Disney's really got a lot going on. And they're struggling, though. I don't think they got the good stories, at least so far. So yeah, but stories are what we need, and we need to delve into these ancient stories, as these tech companies are doing, to keep our culture going, restoring these fragments, and this will give us our antidote to the meaning crisis, our way of surviving and thriving, and so we need that antidote. What's the antidote? Story and contemplation. And so how do I combine contemplation and story? Read long books. It's this dying art. We need to revive. You need to get addicted to reading really long books, 700 pages. It's going to feed your heart and your mind. It's going to allow you to contemplate. work your memory and your imagination, cultivate the imagination. The imagination is getting stultified by these constant barrage of images and entertainments. We need deeper thought. We need culture. We need these wisdom traditions. And so we have them there. They're in the library. They're in these books. Let's go to these. And that's how we're going to move forward.